Welcome to Mindshift, I'm Brandon, and today is another Saturday Short. Now, I almost feel bad about making today's video. It is such low-hanging fruit, but when you see a video that has this many errors, this many misconceptions, this much proof of religion that we know these claims have been debunked, all in one video, it's very hard not to make a response to it, because the fact of the matter is that a vast majority of people believe the kind of claims that this individual is making in this video, and there is zero reason to. So, let's get into it.
This book was written by man. I don't believe in it. So why does it go against men's desires? And why did you read all those books in school and believe those was written by men too?
Okay, so we have 2 points to cover here. The first one he's trying to make is that this book was clearly not written by man, because if it was, it would better represent man's desires, and it goes against so much of man's desires. Wrong. This book completely identifies with man's desires. First of all, this book is misogynistic to its core. This book, this God who wrote this book, supposedly values a man's life more than a woman's life. It would have been astonishing if for this time and place and in the context it was written, this book put women on an equal footing, or if they put people from other nations on an equal footing. They did none of this. This looks extremely man-made in that regard. Also, this book endorses and condones things like slavery and genocide and might makes right and my way or the highway, all of which are very man-centric. Yahweh himself is actually most commonly described as a storm god, who is a god of wrath, a war god, a vengeful god, a jealous god. These are typically masculine traits and masculine fantasies. And by the way, I'm clear that he's speaking about man as in mankind, not just man as in male. But for the time that this Bible was written, only males could read and write predominantly, and they got to make the say about how society went. And so this is reflective of that. I could go on about just this topic for days, about how this absolutely reflects man's desires for reward and punishment, for justice on their enemies, for a place of no more pain, tears, death, or sorrow, a heavenly place with a mansion and a crown and streets of gold. This is man's desires, and for those who didn't do what they said or thought what they should have thought, they burn in hell forever in eternal torment. This is the height of being obviously man's desires. Now, his second point is even worse than his first, trying to make a comparison about the books we were forced to read in school and why we would believe those if they were also just written by men. First of all, and this might blow your mind, you don't believe a book simply on who the author was. It might give some more credence or credit to that individual if they have a history of telling the truth and being fact-checked, etc. But no one is just saying the only books we could ever believe are books by an omnipresent God. No one is also saying that everyone just absolutely believes everything they've ever read in any book ever. Most of the books that are given to us in school fall into one of a few categories. Fiction, which is not to be believed, but is to be used at looking at symbolism and themes and things of this nature to help us learn how to think and to gain perspective on a world that we might not be familiar with. And the Bible actually serves that purpose really well. But if you're talking about textbooks such as science or history or any of the other subjects that are in school, those are not just blindly taken to be true. The only reason that they made it into the textbook is because they've passed a succession of peer review and editing and multiple individuals looking at this and backing this up in multiple different angles. And they quite oftentimes say, here's what we don't know though, or here's something we're still looking to discover, or here's the most popular theory put forward at this time. Now, have some textbooks made claims that had to be revoked later? Yes. That's the beauty of it. That's what makes them more trustworthy. Science tries to find errors in things that science has previously claimed. We run the studies again a decade later to see if they still hold up. We peer review each other's papers and thoughts and processes and experiments and outcomes and theories and conclusions as much as possible. Now, are there some things that happen in that community that can cause shortcuts and all of that? Of course, nothing is perfect. But the opposite of perfection is letting something be written down over a 1,000-year period by hundreds of different authors in many different languages and saying, this is it forever, we got it right. These books are subject to scrutiny based on evidence, logic, peer review, and critical thinking. It's not always going to be perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than ancient religious myth.
This book was written by the government to control us. So why is the government trying to ban it in this country and all the other countries around the world?
This one is what I meant when I said I almost feel bad at taking on this video, because it's so clearly wrong, and I can even feel the Christians on the other side of this video cringing at this. But not all Christians. In fact, quite a bit many would agree with him. First of all, the government did not write the Bible. Now, maybe he meant the leading authority back in the day. The people just believed that these books were put together for some form of control, etc. I believe that initially these books were written for people to explain the world around them, to try to make sense of things. In some cases, to some people at some times, to give them structure and lead them or hold them accountable, etc. And to my knowledge, no government is trying to ban these books. The people that are getting these books banned are the right-wing Christians who are trying to ban so much of free speech in the name of only showing what they believe to be true. And people like myself saying, if we're going to ban books, we should be banning the Bible. The Bible has ludicrous sexual and immoral acts all over the place, that if you're worried about children being introduced to concepts you don't think are age appropriate, you start with the Bible, not with Harry Potter. But the Bible is 100% not banned in this country, not trying to be banned in this country. To be fair, there's probably a few iterations of in certain spaces with certain groups, either banning all religious text or being sure to include all religious text. This comes from a separation of church and state. Public school teachers, for instance, that want to hold Bible studies, that is not an okay thing. And the only reason you don't like it is because you're a Christian and you think that's the truth. But if this country was predominantly Muslim and there were Muslim teachers trying to have Quran studies, you would be the first person to stand up and try to use separation of church and state to keep that out of your children's mind. So you can't have it both ways. You don't get to complain about the Bible not being allowed in certain spaces that are inherently secular or governmental, but then also be ready to oppose any other holy book being introduced in those spaces.
This book is false. It's a book full of lies and don't tell you the truth. So why do, whenever you go to court, they make you put your right hand on it and promise to tell the truth? Why would they make you put your hand on a book full of lies and make you promise to tell the truth?
For me, it's the two really snarky, self-righteous laughs that just make me feel like it's okay to go ahead and attack this video. The Bible is full of lies. It's also full of some truth. It got some things right and it got many things wrong. If we're just talking about facts, like how many people populated a certain area at a certain time, which people groups were enslaved in mass numbers to certain other people groups at a certain time, where cities were, when cities were, who governors were, the list goes on. Bible history is absolutely mostly fallacious. Just because a city named Jericho at one time existed somewhere around the time that the Bible also talks about Jericho does not prove that the Bible is true. Again, a perfect example that I've heard of this is when Harry Potter talks about London, it doesn't make Harry Potter true just because London happens to be a real place. But the main crux of this particular argument is if the Bible is full of these lies, why do you have to swear on it to tell the truth? And this answer is really simple. If you had just believed those history books you read in school, you might have an idea of how this came about. But I know you don't believe anything that was written by men, so let me fill you in. The history of swearing on the Bible actually started with very traditional English roots. It worked its way into English common law that we adapted even pre-Revolutionary War and then still chose to upheld even after the war. It has slowly been dying out, and we'll get to that in a second. And maybe you didn't know, but these holy books can actually be interchanged with secular books or someone else's holy book. The idea is not that the Bible is the sole source of truth. In fact, getting back to that history book, if you just look at your First Amendment, you'll see that when it was ratified in 1791, it guaranteed religious freedom and also at the same time prohibits the government from endorsing unofficial religion. So at this point, the Bible being the main thing that is still sworn on just happens to be because it's the majority of what people believe in this country, and it also stems from the tradition that happened before those rules went into effect. But even today, if you were to go be a witness in a court case, you can just affirm under penalty of perjury instead of swearing on the Bible. And lastly, the only reason that this ever worked and that people wanted to do this is not because everyone was a Christian and everyone wanted to be sure that people were swearing and telling the truth according to their God. It was because of the fear, the superstition that might befall someone who lied after swearing on the Bible, which is funny because we're told from the Bible, just don't lie. So the fact that to really make sure you get people not to lie, you have to scare them into some witchcraftery, superstitious kind of thing that, hey, you've put your hand on the Bible and it was your right hand, as if that means something special. Well, it does according to the superstitions of the Bible, and that once you've made that solemn vow on that Bible, somehow your punishment would be greater for lying than it would have been otherwise. We use it as a tool for the person who is not smart enough to understand that a lie is a lie regardless, to get them to tell a truth they otherwise might not tell.
This book has a bunch of fairy tales. None of that stuff really happened. Like Noah in the Ark, that's false. This is a bird-eyes view of an indention on a mountain named Mount Ararat, the same mountain that they claim that Noah and his ark landed on dry ground. Do you know Noah's ark was 515 feet? Do you know archaeologists went and measured this indention? Guess how big that indention was? 515 feet.
Did you know the Frostbank Tower in Austin, Texas is 515 feet? Did you know that that is also not the ark? First of all, we can't even get an accurate measurement for the ark because it was done in cubits, and that has a bit of a range. So actually the best that we can say is an average, or we can say that it's between this length and this length. It doesn't matter though, because no archaeologist went and measured that indention. Ron Wyatt went and said said that sure looks like it and claimed to be an archaeologist while really only being a nurse anesthesiologist. But this site has 100% been explored by real scientific study. That indentation is extremely common for the typical landscape of that time and has been caused by the formation and ebb and flow of erupting volcanoes. All the minerals that are these iron latches that were supposedly used in the Ark are just volcanic minerals that have been tested and dated. There is zero evidence to say that this is indeed the Ark, and if so, just dig it up. It's not there. I cover this claim a ton more in a video that's coming up where I go line by line by line by line from a fundamentalist who commented on one of my videos. And he also made a big claim about Mount Ararat, and I'm going to just let you all wait for that to get the full list of debunking.
What about Moses? That didn't happen. Moses split the Red Sea at Nueba Beach in Egypt. Him and the Israelites, they traveled through the Red Sea. Pharaoh and the Egyptians followed them, but they did not make it out of that Red Sea. A team of deep sea divers went down there into the Red Sea. They discovered human bones, armor, horse bones, and even chariot wheels.
This is a known hoax. Let me give you the details of it very quickly. First of all, people have always kind of made these claims without much proof or evidence. Someone will take a picture of an underwater chariot wheel or something that looks like a chariot wheel, and then they'll say it happened on this date at this time in this place. Glory be to God. But it got taken a step further on October 24th, 2014, and this is when it just circulated. It was first published by a website, the World News Daily Report, which is a website that on that very site claims that the site's articles are satirical in nature. It is a fake news site. It's like The Onion. Even though these were already older claims that had been debunked, what made this look so much more real is the article said things like, as of this morning, and a team of deep sea archaeologists looking for shipwreck. All of these things that he's even quoting here gave it some sense of legitimacy or modernity that then just got passed around without anyone looking at this for quite a long time. It has 100% to be proved to be a hoax. It is not a real story. No archaeologists really found these things. We'll get into the story of the Exodus and all of the many problems with it, but this is the just easiest one to say, nope, fake news article. We knew it. All right, even though the rest of this video is relatively short, I'm not going to play it all for you here because it's just stuff that none of us need to hear. I'll link it in the description so you know I'm not making anything up, but he just goes on to say, hey, this book is real. It's going to force you to examine your life. Those of you who don't read it, it's because you don't want to examine your life. You want to stay in your sin. You don't want to be held accountable. But if this book does end up being true, you're going to be in for it. Just more threats and putting it on you as the worst person in the world who doesn't want to read this book because you love your sin so much, instead of maybe the truth that people who already haven't read this book at least know enough about this book to not give it the time of day that they don't give the Quran or the Greek myths or anything else. It's not that special. You're not that special. This belief is not that special. It is par for the course of religious texts. There's better ones. There's ones just like it that predate it. There's ones with more loving messages and more fair gods. And enough people know enough about this to just say, I don't care. And the people like me who do still really care, it's because this book did affect our life negatively for so many decades. Because we see people still making videos about it, about how it's real and how they know it's real, that are completely invalid and obvious to see. This book is a book and it is nothing more. So, food for thought on this Saturday. I'm really excited about tomorrow's video, so stick around for that. And we've got some great ones coming up later this week as well. So please subscribe if you have not. Turn on notifications, give me a like, share, or comment if you would be willing to. I'm really excited about the growth this channel is taking on and what we'll be able to do in the future with it. So thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful day, and as always, keep thinking.